Hi guys! Salamat sa inyong patuloy na pagsubaybay dito sa ating ginagawang discussion about statics of rigid bodies. In today's discussion, we shall be discussing equilibrium of non-concurrent force system in space. So ngayon ay 3-dimensional ang ating pag-uusapan, and at the same time, the forces are not concurrent. Guys, ito yung problem. There is a mass AD that is supported in a ball and socket joint at A and by two guy wire BD and CD as shown in the figure. Find the magnitude of the force at A if F equals 600I and P equals 400K. So this problem, guys, is taken from the book of Singer. The problem is 3-6.14 and this problem has an answer such that the answer in the book is 1,718 pounds. Guys, kapag ganito ang problem, malaking bagay kapag yung mga coordinates ng points ay naipakita agad natin at matiyak natin na yung kanyang values ay correct. So if we will be assigning this point A as our origin such that this point will be at 0, 0, 0, then we try to identify the coordinates of point B, C, D, and this point where P and F are directed, considering that point A is our origin. Now looking at the dimension, having these dimensions as 5, 6 and lying on the XY plane, therefore, point B will have a coordinate of -6, 0, and 5. Whereas this point C will have a coordinate of 0, 0, and -5. Negative because it is directed, or it is lying along the z-axis towards its negative direction. While this point D will have a coordinate of 0, 12, and 0. And this point where P and F are applied will have a coordinate. Tawagin natin siyang point E at meron siyang coordinate na 0, 6, and 0. Pakita natin itong magnitude ng F, since F is directed along or directed towards the positive x-axis as indicated by this one. The magnitude of this F is 600, while this P has a magnitude of 400 and directed towards the positive z-axis. Ayun. Guys, kapag ganito ang problem, alam natin na itong guy wire ay will be exerting attention. And because it is directed from D to B, we will expect that the tension will have three components. One component along the x-axis, the other one along the y-axis, and the other one along the z-axis. So ipakita natin yung kanyang force, assuming that this is the direction of the force. So we shall see here the direction of the component. The component along the x will be directed towards its negative direction, along the y towards the negative, as well as along the z towards the positive z direction. While this DC will have a component in two directions only because the force C is lying, D and C are lying on the plane containing Z and Y. Sa makatid, wala siyang X component. Kaya pag pinakita natin ito kanyang force, it will be directed in the direction and it will have a component in the Z and in the Y direction. So ipakita rin natin itong support dito, since this is a ball and socket connection. Meron tayong inaasahan na tatlong components dito. Bagamat hindi natin alam ang kanyang direction, pwede tayong mag-assign that ang direction ng components dito ay directed towards the positive direction of the axis. So that we shall have here A sub x towards the positive x-axis. Meron tayo ditong A sub y, which is also directed towards the positive y-axis or upward, and A sub z towards the positive z-axis. Kaya kung pag-aaralan natin, meron tayo ditong Sa kabuuan, sa kabuuan meron tayong 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 unknowns. Pero dahil yung tatlo dito are just components of BD, these are components of CD, and these are components of A. So, ibig sabihin, meron lamang tayo ditong tatlong unknowns. Sa makatwid, kung meron tayong tatlong unknowns, tatlong independent equations lang ay sapat na para ma-solve natin ang problem. Diba? Kaya, subukan natin ipakita yung magnitudes ng components ng BD, okay, at ng components ng CD in tabulated form sa pamamagitan ng ratio and proportion concept. I will show you here the table that I usually use in computing or in expressing the components of the force kapag ang force ay directed na in space. So I normally have this table where the first column represents the magnitude of the force involved. The next three columns represent the component of the distance where the force are directed. The next column is the distance between the 2 points na kung saan dumaraan yung force, and the next three columns represents now the components of the force in the X, in the Y, and in the Z direction. At paano ito pinipilapan? So pinipilapan siya sa pamagitan ng paggamit natin ng mga coordinates nito, So halimbawa, puntahan natin itong BD, yung BD. Yan. So yung X component yan tumutukoy sa X component or the coordinates of the points from which the force BD is directed. Since it is directed from D towards B, therefore, ang value ng X shall be the coordinates of point D minus, the coordinates of point B minus the coordinates of point D. So that this becomes, yung X dito will be, negative 6 minus 0. Kaya lumalabas dito is negative 6. This one, 0 minus 12. Ang labas dito is negative 12. This one is 5 minus 0. So this will be, this will be 5. And to solve for the distance between B and D, we take the distance formula, that is the square root of x squared plus y squared plus z squared gives us the distance D. And so when we simplify that, when we take the square root of x squared plus 12 squared, x squared plus y squared plus z squared, lumalabas dyan is the square root of 205. So that the x component of the distance BD shall be taken by multiplying the force BD by the component along x, dividing it by the distance. So that this becomes what? Negative 6 BD, the square root of 205. While this one is negative 12 BD over the square root of 205, and this one is 5 BD over the square root of 205. Maaaring tanong niyo, bakit negative dito? Bakit meron ditong dalawang negative while the other one is positive? Itong negative na nakikita natin dito, tumutukoy siya kung nasaan ang direction ng component. Kaya kung nakita natin ito negative 6 BD, ibig sabihin yung x component ng ating BD is directed towards the negative x-axis. Ganyan din dito sa FY, negative 12 BD. Ang ibig sabihin ng negative ito, yung y component ng BD is directed in the downward direction. And because it is positive, therefore indicates that the direction of the component along the z direction is directed towards the positive z-axis. Okay, subukan naman natin itong CD. Okay, wala siya ngayong z component. At makikita naman yan dito, di ba? Subukan natin yung CD, Yan. Ang value ng x component will be 0 minus 0, and that gives us 0. While the value of y will be 0 minus 12, that gives us a negative value, negative 12. And z is negative 5 minus 0, that gives us a value of negative 5. Kaya pag kinuha natin ang distance nito, it is actually equal to 13. That is the square root of negative 12 square plus 5 square, and that gives us the square root of 169. Taking the square root of that, this is equal to 13. So that the x, y, and z component of the force CD shall be equal to the product of CD multiplied by x divided by 13 will be 0 for this one. CD multiplied by negative 12 divided by 13 is negative 12 over 13 of CD. While CD multiplied by negative 5 divided by 13 becomes negative 5 CD over 13. Ganun din ang explanation, ano? Itong negative na nakikita natin dito, tumutukoy kung saan yung direction ng component along the Y. Sabihin, pababa siya. In the Z, ayun, directed in that direction. Di ba? So, what are the other force involved? So, we also have here F. Di ba? Yung F natin, na 600, ang direction lamang niya is towards the positive x-axis. Kaya, ang may value lamang niyan, okay, itong value nito. Dito natin makita yung 600, the other two components are 0. Whereas, this 400, the P that is equal to 400K, ang ibig sabihin to, direction is the positive z-axis. Kaya kung papakita natin ito lang yung may value niya. Wala siyang component along the x and along the y. So, this one is 0, this is 0, and this is equal to 400. And then if you are going to show the reaction at the support at A, since all of the components are assumed to be directed along the x, along the y, and along the z. Therefore, these are all, okay, A is actually an unknown, the one you are looking for. This will be our AX, this will be our AY, and this will be our AZ. So, para maunawaan natin kung paano natin siya susulbin, tingnan natin kung applicable ba yung summation of forces along X, along Y, and along Z para makuha natin yung AX, AY, and AZ. Simple lang yun pag titingnan natin itong part na ito, itong column na ito, di ba? Can we already solve for the value of AX? Makita natin hindi pa kasi BD is also an unknown value. Ibig sabihin, masosolve lamang natin itong AX kapag alam na natin yung BD. Di ba? Ganon din dito sa F, sa components along Y. If we will sum up this component, so we cannot solve yet AY because there are two more unknowns. If we shall know BD and we shall know CD, then that's the time that we can solve for A sub Y. Ganon din dito sa component na ito. Di ba? Kaya kung titignan natin, makikita natin yung scenario, yung procedure eh. So, ibig sabihin yan, okay, before we can sum up force along X, we need to solve for BD. Eh, nasan yung BD? Ito yung BD, di ba? Ito yung BD. So, kailangan makapag-formulate tayo ng equation na ang present lamang ay ang BD. In other words, we should be formulating an equation that, okay, CD shall be eliminated plus, okay, those components along, those components at A. Sa makatwid, if we shall be summing up forces along the z-axis, itong axis na ito, na nakikita natin itong axis na ito, okay? If we shall be summing up this forces along this axis, sa makatwid, yung force CD will pass through that axis and therefore it will create no moment. Similarly, since A is along this axis, all these components will create no moment and therefore all A's and CD's will be eliminated in the equation. And so we shall only be forming an equation where BD is involved plus those that are given in the problem. Diba? Kaya if we will be summing up this moment along this z-axis using the convention that counterclockwise along this axis, pag umikot siya papaganyan, will be positive. So, what will be our moment equation? Pag-aralan natin. Ano-ano yung mga matitira sa moment equation? Tingnan natin, itong BDX na ito, wala siyang magiging moment kasi kung i-extend natin siya, it will also pass to the z-axis. Ganon din itong BDZ. So, it will create no moment because its tendency is to just slide along that axis. The only moment due to BD is the component of the BD in the y direction which will be producing a moment in that direction and that would be positive and whose moment arm is equal to 6 feet. Kaya pag in-apply natin yan, I have here BDY multiplied by 6 and that is positive. Diba? What about the moment due to K or to 400? Because 400 is directed along towards the positive z-axis. Ibig sabihin, wala din siyang capacity to create moment about the z-axis. And the only moment that will be created shall be the moment due to F that is directed towards the positive x-axis and whose moment arm shall be this value. which is equal to 6, and directed in the clockwise direction along the z-axis. Therefore, that would be negative. So that we shall have here minus 600 multiplied by 6, and all of this shall be equal to 0. Kaya kapag sinimplify natin ito, yung 6 na ito will cancel, so that we shall have BD will be equal to 600 o BDY. So mga katwid, if we will be substituting that component here, diba, na ang BDY is equal to 12 BD over the square root of 205. Sandali muna, meron ako ipapapansin sa inyo. Okay. Bakit nakita natin na itong pinakita ko dito meron siyang negative? Pero bakit nang isinubstitute ko na dito, wala na yung negative? Ganito explanation na, itong negative na nakikita natin dito, itong dalawa na ito, no, ay tumutukoy sa kung saan ang direction at naipakita na natin siya dito. At itong nakikita natin itong 12 BD over the square root of 205 is already the magnitude. Kaya kung na-compute natin yung BD dito, ito na lamang ating sasubstitute yung kanyang magnitude. Kaya yung kanyang magnitude dito is 12 BD over the square root of 205. Hence, BD now can be simplified so that BD is equal to 50 times the square root of 205. Diba? So, what else? What shall we do next? So, gaya ng nakikita natin dito, masosolve natin yung AY kapag nasolve natin yung CD. Sa mga katwid, we need to compute for the value of CD here. And how are we going to do it? Now, if we will be taking moment summation about this axis, about x-axis, ano? So, subukan natin yan. Summing up moments about x-axis, we can now solve for CD. So, ito yung ating x-axis. Okay, ang moment summation yan, okay, moment will be positive, it will be rotating in that direction. And you will notice that lahat ng A will be eliminated. Ano? What else? Itong CDZ as well as BDZ will have no moment, as well as the 600, because they will just, itong 600 ito, it will just cause sliding against that direction. So the moment will only be due to CDY and BDY plus the moment due to the 400. Ang kinakailangan natin ma-identify lamang kung ano yung resulting direction ng moment, okay, due to these forces. Pag-aralan natin. Itong BDY na ito, ano yung kanyang moment? It will be creating a counterclockwise moment about x, and whose moment arm shall be 5. Kaya pag sinubstitute natin yan, okay, BDY multiplied by 5. Tingnan naman natin itong 400, ano? Itong 400 na ito, ang kanyang moment arm about this axis is 6, kaya, and it will be turning in the counterclockwise moment also with respect to this axis. Therefore, that will also be positive, and I have here 400 multiplied by 6. Whereas this moment, CDY, will be turning about, okay, the x-axis in the clockwise direction. Therefore, that would be negative CDY multiplied by the moment arm, which is equal to 5. And all of this must be equal to 0. Substituting the value of BDY, which is already computed to be at 600. So, I will have here 600 multiplied by 5 plus 400 multiplied by 6 minus CDY, or it shall be equal to CDY multiplied by 5. So that when CDY is substituted or computed, the value will be 1080. Diba? Now, if CDY is already computed, then we substitute ano nga yung magiging value ng CD. So, but CDY, ito yung CDY, ano? Ito yung component is equal to 12 over 13 multiplied by CD. Therefore, CD here will be equal to, okay, 1170. Now, kung masolve natin ang CD at saka BD, so we can now substitute it here, diba? And we can now solve for the value of AX, AY, and AC. So, let us do it one by one. Okay? Pakita natin. So, if we will be summing up force along the x-axis, ito yun, ano? Pakita natin ito. Okay, what shall we do? We can now solve for the value of AX because we shall know, we already have computed for the value of BD, which is equal to, okay, 50 multiplied by the square root of 205. So, substitute natin yan, ha? I will have negative 6 multiplied by BD over the square root of 205 plus 600 plus AX shall be equal to 0. Now, we substitute the value, ano? Substitute natin yung value ng BD to be 50 the square root of 205, this one, in this equation. So, I will have here, okay, 6 multiplied by 50 the square root of 205 divided by the square root of 205 plus 600 shall be equal to, plus AX shall be equal to 0. You'll notice that these two will cancel. Okay, matitira dyan is AX to be at negative 300. Ang ibig sabihin nito, itong AX na inassume natin towards the positive x-axis is directed in the opposite direction. Ang direction niya dyan ay directed towards the negative x-axis. Ba? Now, puntahan naman natin itong AY. So, how are we going to solve for AY? By summing up all these forces, ano? So, pag sum up natin yung forces na yan, ano makikita natin? I will have here, summing up forces along the y-axis, we can now solve for A sub y. So, we shall be solving this value. So, what do we have here? We have negative 12 BD over the square root of 205 minus 12 CD over 13 shall be, or plus AY shall be equal to 0. Again, we shall be substituting the value of BD, ano? And the value of CD, which is already computed to be 1170. Kita natin yan, yung BD is 50 the square root of 205. At ito namang CD ay 1170 na compute natin dito, di ba? Kaya pag sinubstitute natin yan, 12 multiplied by 50 times the square root of 205 divided by the square root of 205 minus 12 times 1170 over 13 plus AY shall be equal to 0. And when we simplify, okay, so this will cancel. We solve for AY. AY will be 1,680. The same is true for A sub Z, di ba? Pag sinum up natin itong forces na ito, then we can solve for A sub Z. So how do we do it? Now, we sum up forces along the z-axis. So we can now solve for A sub Z. So what do we have? I will have negative 5 BD over the square root of 205 minus 13 CD over 13 minus 5 CD over 13 plus 400 plus AZ shall be equal to 0. But what is BD again? Okay, we substitute BD to be 50 the square root of 205. We also substitute CD to be 1170. And when we do it, we shall have here, okay, that equation. So again, 205 will cancel. And when we simplify, AC will be negative 200. Itong negative na nakikita natin dito, ang ibig sabihin nun, AC is directed along or towards the negative z-axis. Now, after we have computed for AX, AY, and AC, now we can compute for A. And how do we do it? So, we can compute by applying now the resultant of concurrent forces. So, we have A equals the square root of AX squared plus AY squared plus AC squared. When we substitute the value, so we have the square root of negative 300 squared plus 1,680 plus negative 200 square, and the value of A is 1,718.255 pounds. So guys, yan yung ating solution sa pag-solve ng problem kapag meron tayong equilibrium of non-concurrent force system in space. So kinakailangan lamang natin makita kung paano siya i-formulate, at sana nakita nyo yung process, Kaya huwag tayong magsawa guys sa pagsubaybay sa aking channel. Kung hindi ka pa nag-subscribe, you can still subscribe to my channel so that you will be notified of my next uploads. Guys, thank you for watching.